takes resilience. I guess there's all the testing that occurs at recruitment to determine whether or not you've got what it takes to be a soldier. There is a certain level of resilience. I guess, you know, I can think of that as that's a strength that I must have had and still have. You get to experience many different things. You know, adventure training. We went abseiling, rappelling down a cliff. You know, canyoning. Yeah. There's all those sorts of things. You know, you build mates for life along the way. Even if you get posted separately and you don't see them for years, they do become lifelong friends.
Welcome to Tiger Jam, a podcast about storytelling, raw, unfiltered, and unscripted. I'm your host, Stephan Neuwerk, clinical psychologist and founder of Easy Tiger Psychology. Tiger Jam is not to replace therapy. Tiger Jam is not to give advice. Tiger Jam might go under your skin and might be confrontational. Please pause the podcast if you feel overwhelmed and seek professional help. Thank you. Cool. All right. Thanks for coming today. Could you introduce yourself a little bit for us?
Ooh, an introduction of who I am.
Yeah.
Well, my name's Jodie. When I have to think about introducing myself, it kind of makes me think a bit like, what is my identity now?
Okay.
I guess the initial thing that comes to mind is that I'm a veteran. After serving 17 and a half years in the army. But that's not all I am anymore. I was obviously something before I was a veteran, or before I even served in the army. I was a sum of multiple things. And it's been 5 years since I left the army, so there's also been a bit of time where I've had to work on trial and error, trying a new job, trying another new job, and reinventing myself. So as well as being a veteran these days, I have also become an equine-assisted therapist.
Right. What's that?
So thanks for asking, because I guess not a lot of people know. I mean, what
I was
equine-assisted
pretending to not
is.
know because I know, because you and I, we had conversations. Yeah. But I would like, you to explain that a little bit to us.
Yeah, sure. So equine-assisted therapy involves horses.
Yeah. And
essentially our qualification should be, at the minimum, a counsellor or even a psychologist or a social worker, someone in the allied health field, because it is designed to help people in a process of mental health and well-being.
Yeah.
It's currently an emerging field at the moment, so people are only just starting to hear about it. You'd probably find even a lot of counsellors and psychologists still aren't fully aware, and the community is certainly not aware that equine-assisted therapy exists yet. Okay. It's a experiential process, so anything that you might talk about or learn about during an equine-assisted therapy session can actually be put into practice around the horse. So that horse creates that relational conduit to be able to experience connection, trust, confidence, a whole series of other things that might be working towards a goal that a person might have, and can also provide a lot of meaning in some of the responses that the horses can give.
Yeah. Okay. So we have a horse.
Yeah.
We have a counselor.
Yes.
We have a client.
Yes.
And do they, like, is that considered to be like a team approach, or is the horse and the counselor a team and the client is the client, or like, are there any like considerations how this triangle works?
I guess, yeah, triangle's probably a good description of it, because there is that sort of therapeutic relationship between the client and the counsellor, as well as a relationship being formed between the client and the horse.
Yeah.
The counsellor would already have a relationship with the horse and can use that knowledge around horses, or their knowledge of horses and the ways horses communicate, to help guide the person through the session with the horse, and be a support and a safety person to help that interaction with the horse.
Yeah. Okay. Funny, weird question. Do you have to have a relationship with the horse already as a counselor, or could you grab a random horse and do equine therapy with any horse?
So I have my own horses at home in my private practice, but I have done multiple sessions with other people's horses, in particular when I've gone to volunteer in community programs where we've offered sessions to the community for them to come along and see what equine-assisted therapy is all about. So when we do go out to the community, often people will be asked to bring horses along.
Okay. Yeah. So you can bring your own horse.
No, not the clients.
Yeah.
There will be other people in the area that are part of the program that may have horses in their area that they'll bring in for the sessions. All of the horses will be audited the day before the sessions, so we can get to know the horses and to know which nervous systems to match them up with or to not match them up with.
I'm probably looking at it from a very traditional perspective of a room has to be closed. There are no interruptions. There's no phone ringing. There's nothing happening. The psychologist or the therapist has to be in control of the environment. And that allows a client to have deeper conversations, have deeper epiphanies, and sort of let go of control, so then like the deep work can happen in that room. I think that's a very traditional way to look at therapy, and I cannot imagine that happening with a horse in a paddock.
I think some of the things that you just described with the paddock being outside, for instance, it also brings an element of nature.
Yes.
Fresh air, sunlight on your skin, listening to the birds, noticing what's around you can all be therapeutic elements, which can be appealing to people that might feel a little closed in a room. For example, the horse is going to be offering authentic responses based on what's going on with the client. And those responses can be as simple as moving away if there's something that they're not comfortable around, or even stepping in when the client is having a really authentic moment of emotion.
Yeah. Okay. Fascinating. Like I really like the idea of I would like to see it, I guess. Are there certain mental health issues that are very good to work in equine therapy with, or some that are not appropriate?
I wouldn't say there were any that were not appropriate. There's certainly research being gathered that it is helpful for a very wide variety of conditions or different people, demographics. There's also a lot of positive results, videos getting about where a lot of veterans are finding with PTSD that experience with the horses, being present in the moment can be of beneficial to them. There's a lot of autistic children that are getting a lot of benefits out of being around horses and the movement that's involved in it all. People that have anxiety or people lacking in confidence are getting physical skills that they can actually feel like they're achieving something by just leading a horse, picking out their hooves, turning up for the day, getting outside of their house and turning up for a session.
Yeah. Do you have a special field or speciality or something?
I don't have a speciality as such. Some people find that their clients find them. I definitely have a personal passion to be sort of trying to give back and help out that veteran community. So I'm always looking for ways that I can help them in regards of finding funding or programs that can fund the sessions for them. I'm also pretty good with children. I find that I can engage with children very, very easily. But no, adults, I'm not limited to who I'll see.
Yeah, funding would be my next question. Like, I think there's no funding for it in terms of Medicare or maybe private health insurances. I'm not sure about that. But is there any funding? Is there any pathway for clients to look into getting financial support doing equine therapy?
There are some practitioners out there that may have higher levels of qualification. So if they actually started out as a clinical psychologist, for example, prior to their bringing in that equine-assisted mental health component to their repertoire, they might already be eligible to claim the Medicare rebates. But in general, counsellors, level 1 counsellors, we do have the capacity to assist NDIS clients based on that allied health qualification, but not at the level required for the Medicare model. So that also includes that white card, gold card, where DVA and Defence say that every soldier and veteran has 5-star mental health care. Except it does not include equine-assisted therapy based on how that Medicare model works. However, under any funding that involves meaningful engagement and well-being, so rehab, some insurances might offer packages or funding for meaningful engagement and well-being type activities. Ex-services organisations are starting to get on board funding activities for that wellbeing space. That seems to be the area that we fall in at the moment.
How do people connect with you?
Yeah, so I do have a website. My business name is called Stable Surroundings. I have a Facebook page as well. The website's got a fair bit of comprehensive information that will talk through the services that are on offer. I'm based in Singleton in the Hunter Valley.
Okay, let's talk about the military a little bit. Military background. For how long have you been in the military?
Yeah, so, well, before I actually joined the Army, I was a spouse of a person in the Army for about 6 years. So I left my hometown, moved around to a few different locations, at least 3 different posting locations while I was a spouse.
Yep.
So that had its challenges of, as a spouse, you're the one that has to leave behind your job and leave behind any friends that you might have, networks that you might have made, and start that all over again. At least as the serving member, you're moving because of the job.
Yeah.
And you have your peers around all the time. So I didn't even know that joining the Army was an option for me in my early 20s until that experience of moving around and then realising girls could join the Army. So after having to find my, new job in every town that we moved to was usually a lowest paid sort of minimum wage factory type job.
Yeah.
I started wondering what I could do for myself that might give me a better career, or at least better pay. And I didn't really feel like I had the time to study or could afford to study. But the option of joining the Army was going to give me the training at no cost to me, as well as a good salary. So that became quite appealing. And then finding out that girls could join the Army too, I joined at the age of 26. And 17 and a half years later goes like, the blink of an eye.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can relate to that. Yeah, interesting. And can you talk a little bit about your role in the Army? What was your job?
So I core enlisted, which means that I chose the trade that I was going into right from the start, and went to my basic training and then all of my postings thereafter, after going to my initial trade training school, was in the Ordnance Corps, and admin was my profession.
Okay. What are the advantages and disadvantages of being a soldier, in your opinion?
Ooh, tough question. Well, even though my trade was admin, I guess soldier first is obviously your first trade before the job, the role that you play. I guess maybe disadvantage maybe that you have to move all the time. So every couple of years you've got to change the location that you are in, move to another location to fulfill another role. It generally has to do with Army's capability, and as well as a career model. So your career model might say that you need to do so many years in a certain type of posting, like a reserve unit or a career management role, and you might have to do a set number of years doing a unit posting where you actually are an orderly room clerk. So that they can be two quite different roles, and before you are eligible for promotion. And then again, after you get promoted, there might be 2 different postings that you'd have to do to fit that model of training that you're required to achieve before you move up to the next rank.
Yeah. Okay, so moving a lot. I don't know, for a person like me, that might be an advantage. I like moving, but the downside is like friendships and family, and probably even having a family and a relationship if that person is not in the army as well, I guess.
Yeah, they're definitely all the reasons why you would call it a disadvantage. But I did like your description of it being an advantage, because you get to leave your hometown. You get to visit so many different locations. You make it home in the places that you move to. You see what's available in that location and make the most of it.
I mean, I moved from within Germany a lot, to New Zealand, to Australia, within New Zealand twice. So for me, like, this world life is a big adventure, and I can't wait to see everything.
Yeah, it definitely can be exciting moving around and seeing all those different places. But I guess the difference between the story that you just relayed to me is a lot of that was under your control.
True.
Whereas, two, sometimes one for some, for some people's careers, 1, 2 or 3 years might go past, and you do have to get up and go, whether you want to or not. You might have decided that you're enjoying that location for a while and you don't want to move, or could be something to do with family that might need you to stay for a bit longer.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point, because I think, as we know, especially in psychology and mental health, as long as you are in control, the glass is half full, and it easily becomes half empty if someone else would make that decision for you.
Yeah. Once you've been deemed medically unfit, the only way is out the door, I suppose. It can be very mentally challenging for a lot of people. I guess throughout your whole career, your aim is not to get medically discharged.
Yeah. People
will be hiding their injuries or not reporting to medical, even if they do have some mental health issues. I guess mental health issues doesn't necessarily always mean that you're going to get kicked out, though. So I do want to promote that people get help when they need some help. And help doesn't have to be when it's at crisis point or when it's really bad. Working on some well-being and self-care as a gradual process. There's, reaching out when you need to, keeping connections, they can all play a role towards good mental health. When I served, there were at least 2 occasions where I asked to see a psychologist, because obviously the Army only pay for those higher level treatment types. And neither time did those visits to those psychologists play any role towards my medical discharge. My discharge was mostly physical injuries that I'd sustained over a long period of time.
Yeah. Would you be comfortable to talk about that a little bit?
So the first injury was a knee injury that I sustained directly on return from a deployment. So I guess I'd been deployed and then I came straight back, went into a sporting activity and twisted my knee right through the cartilage, right through into a bone bruise. So there would have been a lot of ligament tendon damage as well as the cartilage damage, and then ultimately osteoarthritis. So I carried that injury through the majority of my career. So there was periods of time where I had restrictions and then had to continue to regain my fitness. Had a little bit of surgery, which just an arthroscopy, which cleaned it out a little bit, and then was able to reach a point where I was actually starting to feel back towards peak fitness again. And then on one of my postings, I was asked to do a physical fitness test, which was probably against my restrictions.
Okay.
And then sent my whole injury process backwards. Which was a little bit devastating, especially after having reached a really good fitness level again.
And is that the mentality of soldiers to not say, hey, this is against my restriction? Or like what would be the reason to not speak up? Or is that like a higher up problem?
So the fitness test that I was asked to do, obviously Army people would know it as the PESA. Mm-hmm. It involves a pack march as well as fire and movement with full body armour, water jerry carries. So there's a lot of weight involved in that, as well as, physical movement. Yeah. My restrictions generally were to not lift or carry more than 20 kilos. And at the time I did state my case that I didn't think my restrictions would require me to do the PESA. Yeah. Even though I was passing my basic fitness assessments. Mm-hmm. But nobody within the unit could make a decision about whether or not my restrictions were to preclude me from doing that or not, or was it really a requirement. And a few people misinterpreted the possibility that the medical officer said perhaps you could do a functional capacity assessment, and then, one of the hierarchy and somebody else thought that meant whatever they interpreted it to be, which ended up being, how about you go over to the rehab platoon and go through all the stages of the PESA in one go. So practically they made me do a PESA to prove whether or not I could do a PESA.
God. Oh, sorry.
Even though it was with people in the rehab platoon. Yeah. So obviously I did the PESA at my peril. So the following Monday, I did that on a Friday, and the following Monday back into PT, try to run, my knee gives way again. And then following that, I sustained a shoulder injury, and the whole surgery recovery process just spiraled on from there. Yeah.
And what does that mean to a soldier? How old were you when that happened, and what does that mean to have these kind of injuries? Is that, like you said, people hide it? Is that a problem?
Yeah, I guess if you can pass some of your basic fitness tests without telling anybody you've got an injury, you're fine. But when you've got a knee injury that's affecting you from running and a shoulder injury affecting you from doing push-ups, then it's a little bit harder to hide, because it means you're going to fail a fitness assessment. I guess at the time I was already in my 40s at the time. Yeah. And carrying that knee injury in my left knee for so long, it started transferring, compensation. My right knee was also starting to give me trouble. And then I, had other older injuries as well as some neck strain, which has now been diagnosed as cervical spondylosis. The things were accumulating. So I guess by the time I got up to medical discharge, I feel like I was actually kind of ready to leave the army.
And was that a difficult process for you, like in terms of acceptance? Did you try to fight against it, or was it like ending your career and you were fine and okay?
Yeah. There was a lot in your question there. So
True.
Personally, I knew how injured I was. I probably had a bit of time to feel prepared for that to occur for me after such a long career. But at the same time, there's still so many unknowns, and the processes of going through the welfare boards and going through physio and having that process dragged out so long that before you know it, you're in a welfare board before you've even had a chance to have the surgery and get recovered. So all those sorts of different components coming into play can be a little overwhelming. And then nobody knows what's going to happen on the other side of the medical discharge. What happens when I'm out of the army? I guess a lot of people might leave under those circumstances and feel like they weren't supported enough from the staff at their unit at the time. But I just want to say, after living that experience for the last 5 years, the people that are still in the job, they don't know what it's like on the other side. So it's a bit harder to help. They're only doing the role that they can play at the time. When you step out of the army, then a whole new team comes in. You've got the transition team that comes on board just before you get out to make sure you've got some, dotted all the I's and crossed the T's to try to set you up for a successful transition. But you come out of being in the army and you feel like I need to just decompress a little bit, which is probably my first thought.
Yeah.
But then there's still so much to do. You've got the rehab team coming in and the DVA and all those processes just getting set up for you. So there's still a lot to do. And it probably took me more than 12 months before I even understood where I sat sort of, financially, and what were the expectations of me. What was I going to get in trouble if I didn't meet those expectations from, the DVA side of things.
Yeah. Okay. There's a question that I like asking people, especially veterans, but I also ask that people from in other professions. If your younger self or a young person would approach you and say, hey, what do you think about me joining the army? What would you tell them?
Well, I guess I wouldn't really change a thing about, what I've experienced in life. I probably would have saved some money a little bit earlier.
Okay.
You can get so caught up in, paying for your everyday expenses. You don't really think about. A lot of people do, but for me personally, if I was talking to my younger self, I might have start planning a little bit earlier. And I guess I joined the army when I was 26, so I already had car payments and things like that, from a life before I joined the army. But as it still played a whole role in making me the person that I am today. I've seen different places, and there's a certain resilience that comes through, the skills that you gain through being, a service person.
Are there elements in your life that would have played out very differently if you wouldn't have joined the army?
I may have still been stuck in a, minimum wage job for all I know. The relationship that I was in before I joined the army, it was not going to probably go much further than it was at the time. So for me, joining the army was a little bit of a something for me to go forward, because my partner at the time, when I announced that I was thinking of joining the army, promptly announced that he wasn't going to follow my career anywhere. So
nice.
So
after you followed him, right? Yeah.
Yes. So at Kapuka, when all the instructors have their little opinions on who they think's going to pass and who's not going to pass, they they probably picked me as one that wasn't going to pass, but I knew that I had nothing to go back to, so the only way was forward for me from there.
Yeah. Okay. Have you done any, well, you have done deployments. Have you been to any combat situations?
I guess they call deployments warlike and non-warlike. I did go on one deployment that was a warlike overseas deployment to Kuwait.
Okay.
It was called Op Catalyst. We also titled that one as Operation Iraqi Freedom. Our role in the army was to be training their troops over there to defend themselves, obviously. So Kuwait was more, and being in that logistic role that I was in, was more of a kind of reception party in a way. And all the troops that were going to be going into country, into Iraq, would come through us before they went to their next station. So I didn't actually go fully into country, but I was pretty much in the vicinity of. Still had the same sort of security issues, and we had some interesting times driving around in some big Chevy Suburbans on the opposite side of the road, American vehicles, obviously. Orienting yourself in a foreign country which is a desert with not many landmarks. Eventually, you worked out there weren't many roads either, so you worked out where you were going.
Were there any potentially dangerous situations that you were involved?
Driving these big Chevy Suburbans, the speed limits on the road, I believe, were 120 k's, but I don't think anybody ever went that slow. So the main thing that you were worried about, or you could say the main road rule over there, was get out of the way of the cars going faster. So you always had one eye on that rear view mirror to see what cars were coming up behind you, and you'd kind of move over the lanes to free up the lanes so they could get past. So dangerous in that regard. Any time you saw a accident with vehicles, cars, trucks, you could pretty much say it was a fatality, because it was usually a car wedged up on its side between a truck and a concrete barrier. There was an occasion that I think of when we took some troops out to the range, so again in the desert. We had a role as a sentry on that occasion, and at the end of the range, we had to make sure it was actually a thoroughfare. So the locals would use that as one of their roads. We had to block it off and not allow any vehicles come through, obviously while there's some range practice occurring. So I do recall being down on the ground holding up a double-decker bus full of people and kindly asking them to halt there and not go any further and possibly find another way around. But yeah, I still think back on that day going, I wasn't actually scared at the time, but it could have been a dangerous situation. And sometimes I think back wondering why wasn't I scared at the time? I think some of it just comes down to knowing what my role was there and knowing that my intent was friendly.
Yeah, that would be my next question. Like, do you think that the assessment of a potential dangerous situation changes when someone is in a role where danger is part of the job?
I think that's part of the training. Soldiers are trained to obey orders, protect their fellow soldiers. You're there to do a job.
Yeah. Have you been exposed in your role as a soldier, or maybe even later on as a counsellor and equine therapist, to trauma that is related to the military?
I've done a lot of training around mental health, first aid. The veteran-specific one that I did had a lot of real people examples that were veterans, so that made a lot more sense with those people sharing their experiences. But they generally, everybody's experience is different, and what a person might have as their trauma could be completely different to another person. So a lot of people's traumas can often be around moral injuries or not being able to...
injury. Can you explain that?
So I guess in a way my experience in the welfare boards prior to my medical discharge and some of the things that occurred then could be considered as moral injury. Because the people that are supposed to be there to support you have probably in a way betrayed you somehow. So that's what a moral injury for a military person would be. Obviously, the transitioning away from that whole community, cultural environment and sort of going it alone in Civvy Street can also be traumatic for people. Relationship breakdowns like many other people would be those other types of traumas that would come into play as well.
Yeah.
And I guess one thing with people in the military, that conditioning to, I guess, numb yourself to emotions to get on with that job is a big thing. And that on the other side of that, when you're coming out of the army or even trying to relate to families, that's where all the hardship comes in. Because you've been trained, not to have emotions or, not to cope with things that are back home because you've focused on the role.
Yeah.
I'd say that'd be probably a common thread. And there's on the way out. There's no training to condition you back into, a different
feelings.
Yeah.
Is there, what is the difference between you coming into the military and you're coming out of the military?
Obviously not the same person I was when I joined to now. I've grown a lot. I've experienced a lot. I've been to a lot of different places. I've made a lot of friends along the way. But coming out of the army, there's still no job like it. And then trying to reinvent yourself afterwards, that's a whole another ball game. A lot of employers are keen to take on ex-military people because they believe that we've got a work ethic, but it doesn't always work out. I was medically discharged, so I've got all these injuries that I've also got to work around, so I'm limited in what roles I can do as a next job. And as discussed before, the employers that you end up working for might not always work out because of certain dynamics. Also, when I left the army, I was kind of a little bit in survival mode when I left, thinking, "Oh my God, I've got to hurry up and get a job." There's this pressure on me from like the rehab team to be getting me transitioned into a new job. So the first job that I thought of in my local area is, I guess I can sit there and drive a dump truck. Everybody else is doing that, so I gave that a go. But, it also involved carrying your backpack everywhere and climbing up and down stairs to get on these enormous vehicles. And even though I could do the role, it was starting to take its toll on my injuries. And after a while, that, by the time I realised where I stood financially and all that side of things with my incapacity payments, I started realising that it wasn't about chasing a job for how much it was going to pay me, because every dollar I earned was offset against my pension anyway. So then I had to go back to square one and think about what could I do that maybe aligned with my interests. So I found another job that was involved with horses. So I joined the Australian Stock Horse Society and did an admin role there, which I enjoyed, and I enjoyed the people I worked with. But it was 84 kilometres to drive there every day and back again. So it did start to take a toll on me being so far out of town. So I was never home during the weekdays to even care for my own well-being. And so I did notice a little decline there. It was hard to make my physio appointments. I mean, I was going, but I had to plan them on the weekends, and started realising I needed to make some changes. That's when I re-engaged my rehab team again. And then they agreed to a vocational plan and put me on the path to studying the Diploma of Counselling and specialising in the equine-assisted mental health. And then that was, 2 years of study, which led to me being able to put my passion, which is my horses at home, into a career. And I've only set that up as a part-time career for me, offering to help people in the community, being able to offer, my knowledge and my horses to other people for other people's benefit, as well as making sure I've got time to attend my physio appointments and engage with the community and meet up with a veteran group for coffee and chats. So that the connections in the community is also another important factor for sort of mental health and wellbeing.